Because Uko Cranford was sports stadium.
The growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Welcome to Let's Talk About, a digital television chat show on YouTube and Facebook. The handle, as always, is Trinity United Church Legon. Today, we're looking at the topic, what's in a name? And that's the reason why Reverend Dr. Maxwell Eduobing, the minister in charge of Trinity United Church Legon, is here with us. Also, you are very much welcome.
Thank you very much.
As I said, today we're looking at what's in a name. So, as Christians, we need to, I believe, know the mandate for our naming. So if you could help us with that,
right.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you very much. Every Christian comes from a culture. And for us, we are African Christians. And therefore, our culture provides an opportunity for us to be initiated into our various families before we are initiated into the body of Christ. So in the true sense, if an African Christian is initiated into the family where he cannot live, and then into the church, a denomination where he can decide to live, but at least he's given a name. So names are very, very important. And for me, I would say that names give an identity. Names give us a form of documentation. And that is why we should be very careful about our names.
Also, names give us a form of documentation. Yes. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yes. Well, when we look at the Bible, you will find that some people were given names for a reason. Isaac was given a name, Isaac, which has in it an element of, what we say, laughter. What is it that caused that? It was when Sarah was told that at her old age, she will give birth. So she laughed. So the name of the child is laughter. So it carries a history. So when Abraham mentions his son's name, Yishak, it reminds him of what happened when his wife was told that at old age, she will give birth. So that is the documentation. If you take the African context, you find that my name and your name gives us an identity with a particular tribe and possibly even a particular clan. And therefore, for as long as my name is mentioned, that clan is established.
Oh, so you have you tend to be able to locate where the person,
exactly,
hails from in a way.
So when I hear Kwapong Ekufu, my mind should go to no other place but the hills.
Okay.
If I hear Osei Tutu, my mind will go in another direction.
Yes.
If I hear Chikata, my mind will go in another direction. So they are a form of documentation. It really helps preserve the identity of a people.
That's quite interesting because when children are born and they are given names, a few of the ceremonies that I have attended, I realized the names are mentioned clearly and loudly for the child to hear and to be established on the mind of the child. And sometimes I think the reason is that nobody would be in a situation to call the child he or her, you know. So the names are mentioned to establish your identity, as you have mentioned.
Yes.
So I think it's very, very important. Yes. But we also need to look at the names locally, as you have said, in indigenous languages. You mentioned my name,
Yes.
and you're able to, or you told us where the person might be coming from, as it were. But there are certain misconceptions about namings. And that's I want us to look at.
Right.
And the very first one is the idea of having a first name, a second name, or a third name, which will not be very much understood well in our indigenous areas, in Africa, for instance. Why do you think sometimes we want to have first, second, third, and even sometimes fourth names?
That pattern is very European. You know, the Europeans will talk about your first name, your middle name, your last name, or your family name. They have that order. But it is important for us also to understand that giving of names is biblical. When God created, he brought that which he created to Adam to name. And the Bible says very clearly that the name that he gave to that creature was its name. So whatever name we give is very important. Let me take the Ghanaian and come maybe to the Akan, to be precise. Every Akan is born with a day-born name.
Okay.
So we are all born with a name. If for nothing at all, if you are Saturday born, you are Kwame.
And that's automatic.
That is automatic. And you carry that name until that point when the family will initiate you into the family. And then they will give you a name that is found within that family. And you add that to the Kwame.
So these are weekday names?
Yes. So weekday names and then the family name. Even that family name is a name that they give to you. If you look at the way the Westerners call family name, and you compare it with ours, you will find that our true family name should be the name that the family gave you. It's not your father's name.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because I'm sure as you sit here, you have a name that was given to you by your father, which is completely different from your father's name.
Yes, it's
yes.
True. It's true.
So you have your day-born name, you have the name that was given to you by your father, you have your father's name which you add, and then when you are christened, that is put into the body of Christ, what we say baptism, if you want to put it that way, you're also given a name. And we say that is Christian name. We'll come to that later.
Yes, later on. We'll discuss that in detail.
But we also will find that in our cultures, among the accounts, for example, if you are a firstborn boy, you will have a name.
Which one is that?
If you have, let's say, 3 boys, the first person is Bako.
Okay.
The second one is called Menu.
Menu.
The third is Mensa. The fourth is Anang. enum, nsia. So it keeps going to 10, bedu.
Okay.
So it means the order in which you come, if you are a boy, you will really have a name.
Oh, I see. So with the accounts, naturally and automatically you have a weekday name.
Yes.
And then you have what I might call the chronological name.
Yes.
By way of the
Order in which you come.
Yeah.
Yes. The
their
line.
siblings.
Yes. The siblings
Oh,
come.
okay. Okay.
And if the girls have a way of also giving the name. The firstborn, the secondborn, the thirdborn. The Dangways also have it. The Krobos have similar ones. So somebody will say, my name is this. And you ask him, are you a Krobo? He says, yes. Are you the firstborn? He says, yes. By virtue of the name. If they are twins, they also carry names. Penyin, Kakra, Tewia, Nyankamago. So
The
every
Nyankamago
Ghanaian
will be what?
That's the one after the Tewia.
Oh, okay. So the Tewia comes after the twins.
Yes.
We have a penny here.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you take one person who is a twin, that person has a dayborn name. He or she has a name that was given to him or her by the father. That person has the father's name. When that person is christened into the church, she or she is given a name. So you can see that person has about 4 names.
Yeah.
And for each of these names, depending on the environment he or she finds himself or herself, she will release one. If they are twins, for example, and the other twin is there, she say, I am Penny.
Okay. We have 2 pennies here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So she say, I am Penny. The other one will say, I am Kakra. They will not normally mention their Christian names. When they go to their grandmother will call them by a certain name that is really founded in the family. Maybe one was called Ofebia, one was called Osanbia. So the grandmother will not say Penny or Kakra, but will say that.
So also for the family, as you talk about, the family name. Yes. Who constitutes the family?
Right.
That's the parents of the mother and the father of the child.
In the maternal, that's among the accounts, for example, the matrilineal lines.
Okay.
Normally, that is your family.
Okay.
But you are given a name from your father's side. It is the father who gives a name. So the father will give a name that is related to his family. I know some families. The firstborn was named after the father's father. The secondborn was named after the father's mother. The third one was named after the wife, the mother's mother. So the man has the discretion to name, and he could name in his line or give some names to the wife's line.
And so it's possible that the father of the child could be found not to carry the name of the father.
Yes.
Okay.
So you could have a son who, in the true sense, unless maybe it comes to this context where they say, what is your father's name? And that is treated as your surname. But in the true sense, what we call as the middle name is the name that was given to that person by the family.
Family in this case?
Family being the day on which that child was initiated. The name on which he was given a name, the initiation. He was given a name. When I had a child, our firstborn, I called him Edu, after my father. The second is Edubia, after my mother. And then the third, Hiene, after my wife's mother. Because we're going to give birth to only 3. So I decided to give one to my wife. But my children carry Obeng with them.
And Obeng is your father's name?
Obeng is my name. I was rebellious. I used my father's name as my middle name and used what I was given as my name. So you find that in the Ghanaian context, there's a lot of confusion. Because when we say, what is your name? The answer doesn't come easily. If you're among your peers, you will mention, oh, my name is Ben. If you go to your hometown and they ask you, what is your name? And you say Ben, they say, no, Ben is not your name. What is your name? You say, oh, my name is, what's your name?
Bempo.
Bempo. Aha. So when you say Bempo, straight, they'll tell you, oh, that's our grandfather's name.
And Bempo is my father's uncle's name.
Right. So there's an identity established. So you find that in your family itself, the identity is with the Bempo, not with Ben.
So also, in effect, if you ask somebody his name, you're implying just one.
Well, that is the issue.
Okay.
Normally, they will say, what is your first name? In the in the Western.
Also, we'll take a short break.
Right.
We'll come back to this. It's becoming a little bit complicated.
Okay, yes.
But I know you'll settle it down for us shortly after this break, and then we'll continue from there.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
You are welcome back to Let's Talk About, a platform for discussion of various issues that affect all of us. And today we're talking about what's in a name with Reverend Dr. Maxwell Edu-Obing, the minister in charge of Trinity United Church. Martin, oh, I'm sorry about this. Also, we're talking about the different names, family name, and day names. We also talked about what I call the chronological names. That's if you're the firstborn, you have a name, and all of that. And so I was asking the question, when you ask somebody, an African Christian, what's your name? Yes. For me, it doesn't click very well because then you are wanting to have just one name.
Yes. So when someone is asked, what is your name? Normally, we are quick to look for our first name because of the Western influence. And then we say, my name is Martin. But that really doesn't strike a bell in your family. The one that will strike a bell is the one I was given when I was initiated into the family.
And that's your family name?
And that it really would have been my family name.
Okay.
But we normally refer to family name in the context of the name that cuts through the family. Maybe it will be, the name will be Kumi, and then that becomes the family name. That's the way we see it,
okay,
following the European pattern. So sometimes it is quite confusing for the African. I've seen people sitting at places and filling a form, and they say first name, middle name, last name. That person is called Kofi Mensah. So which one is first name, and which one is middle name, and which one is the last name?
And the Europeans, as it were, will not understand the way we are,
Yes.
talking about it here.
And there are times you even will find that, for example, among the Gans, somebody might be called Ni Ajay.
Why the double?
If we got a guy, he will explain, and we'll see why that person has a double name. I realized one, Anakan. The guy is called Udro. His father was also called Udro. And he's naming his son after his father. So in the true sense, the child's name is Udro Udro.
Oh, I see. Okay, Please, you can send in your questions or comments on social media. WhatsApp, that's 050 157 9996. It's on your screen, I believe. 050 157 9996. That's quite interesting, Osofo. So, Odru Mensa.
Yes. But what he will do is to use just Odru. So he goes to school, he's called Samuel Odru. But if you should investigate further, that's why I said it is a documentation. If you investigate further, you realize that he was named after his grandfather, who was called Odru. And his father is also called Odru, which is the family, he takes it as the family name.
So, Osofo, then, what is a Christian name?
Right. When we say Christian name, it looks like a name that was given to the person when the person was christened or was added to the church. So either infant baptism or adult baptism, one takes a name. And it is interesting to see also that in the Bible, the people we have in the Bible do not have what we will call a Christian name.
I
Not
usually
even
see
Paul.
that they have just one name.
They have only one name, James, Noah. So in their culture, just one name was enough. But because of the missionaries and the Western influence, it has become that when you are christened, you must have a name that is foreign. And sometimes what we call Christian, I mean, what is Christian about Charles? There is nothing Christian about Charles or Rose.
So those ones,
And
could
yet
be
they are
just,
called Christian names.
basically they are European names.
They are. But if you don't carry one too, if Kofi Mensah says, my name is Kofi Mensah, we say, so what is your Christian name? Because in our mind, you must have a name that is foreign.
Also, please tell us. So then what is a Christian name?
So I don't know what really we mean by Christian name. That was the name I was given. That was added to my names. We'll go to the net, Google, and pick a name. So Asante Mensah. At that name, christening. The family name is given at the naming ceremony. Abedinto.
Oh, which is different from the christening.
Exactly. So Abedinto, which is the naming ceremony, is different from the christening. But sometimes we tend to think that the naming ceremony is christening, which is not so.
I see. But these days, do we actually do the family naming ceremony different from the christening?
Yes. They are, well, they might be done the same day, but they are different rites.
Okay.
So, for example, there could be a naming and christening ceremonies. So we would first have to name the child
With a family name?
in the family name, traditionally. That's where we use water and liquor or wine or any soft drink. And then when we are done, we christen the child into the church. And that is where we add what we are calling Christian names. So there are two separate activities. In fact, they can be done independently.
Okay.
They don't need to be done in a day. They can be done independently. So one can do a naming ceremony and give the child a name in that family. In fact, in some cultures and some clans, in Accra, for example, the naming ceremony must be done in the family house.
Oh, before they come for the
Before
christening?
they come to the church for christening. You cannot do a naming ceremony in the church because the child is being initiated into that family. And when that child dies, that child must be sent back to that home or that family house because that is where he belongs.
Because with the family name, then it means that the child is being identified with the family.
Exactly.
Okay. But with the Christian name, the child is being identified with his Christian.
So when you mention it, then they'll say, oh, you are a Christian.
Oh, okay. But do we have any set of Christian names?
We don't. That's why I ask, what is Christian about Rose? What is Christian
It's a
about
flower.
Charles? You know, but because these are Western names, anytime we pick them, we get the impression that we have taking a Christian name. You see, our brothers and sisters in the Ewe Volta region, they have some names that mean the same as what we have in the Christian name.
Like Jibodi means
yes,
patience.
Jibodi means patience. So why don't you take Jibodi and give that name as the Christian name to your child? But rather would say Jibodi, that is the name. Then you come to the Christian, the church, and say patience, Jibodi, something.
It's unnecessary repetition. So, also, you are making me think in a way that it's the meaning of the name that's much more important.
The meaning and the reason for which it is given.
Okay.
Yes, because when a name is given, it is not given anyhow. In some places, you even have to consult the family head. And then he will tell you, this name should be your son's name because he is maybe the firstborn. Or we want to preserve this particular name. There are some names that might even be queer, in the ear.
Yes.
But they are given. Dear Wo.
Has something to do with death.
Yes. But there is a reason why that particular royal family gives that name, Dear Wo, to their sons. So you hear people, Abebrese, and people say, oh, when they say your name is Abebrese, it means you are going to struggle all your life.
Which might not be the case
Which
at all.
might not be.
There's a certain scenario that created that name.
For which it was given.
Yeah, for which it was given.
Yes. And that family will not forget that event.
Ooh. So this is very enlightening. So we've been doing some unnecessary repetitions with names.
Exactly. Because we want a foreign one. Meanwhile, we have some that are locally available. Now, the young men and women are doing quite well. I realize people are calling their names Asida, Ayeyi, Inshira, Nkamfu, which is good. Instead of going in for those other Western names. But you want to show an appreciation. You want to remember an event. So you give a name to the child. So that anytime the name is mentioned, it brings memories. If I mention any of my children's names, it brings memories to me.
Yeah.
Of maybe my mother or my father or my mother-in-law. So we just don't give names. And sometimes you find somebody, what name are you giving to the child? He says, I'm naming the child after myself.
Oh, but you don't constitute the family.
Exactly. You don't even have that strong authority to give the name. It's a permission that you seek. So you cannot name a child after yourself.
It should be a family name.
It should be a family name. Maybe you can say that you are naming the child after somebody in the family.
Also, this is very interesting. Kay, he says, please, are we obliged to name a child after someone?
Well, you see, as I said, name is for purpose of identity and documentation. So if you come from a particular family, there are names that are given. So you need to name the child so that that family will keep that name. It is not about you as an individual. It is about the family.
So the onus is on you, the parent, to go and find out.
Yes, to find out. You cannot just say, I'm naming my child after nobody. In fact, I once attended a naming ceremony, and the guy said he's naming the child after God.
After God?
Yes, so the guy is called Onyame.
Wow.
So how do you trace Onyame in that family? Where does he belong? Is he a first generation, second generation, third generation? So we miss out on some of these things. And we do so because we think that we are giving the names. But you are doing it within a community, an environment, such that when you mention the name, the child can easily be identified.
Okay.
I've known people who, just by the mention of their names, will gain favor. Because immediately they mention the name, it strikes a bell.
It connects the family.
The connection is made.
They come from.
So they ask, is your family from this town? They say, yes. Are they from this part of the town? Yes. Are you the grandson of so and so? Yes. Oh, then you are my brother. By virtue of your name.
So some of us are doing great disservice to ourselves.
Exactly.
We don't find out what our family names are and continue with the naming as such for our children.
Exactly.
Ooh. This is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, with the Christian names and the foreign names, I want you to explain a little bit, that Christian names are not necessarily foreign names.
Christian names should not necessarily be foreign. And as I said, if you go into the Bible, those who are in the Bible, they don't have what we will call Christian names. Well, maybe they came before Christ. But when you come to the New Testament, Timothy is called Timothy. James is called James. But because the missionaries influenced us to have a name in that order, it has become conventional that when a child goes to the pastor and says, I want to baptize my child, what is the child's name? The child is called Elom Dovlo. Then they'll ask, what is his Christian name? Then he says, he doesn't have one. I'll give him one.
Oh, okay.
Because they are expecting 3 names. First name, middle name, last name. But that should not be. If somebody comes and says, my son is called Elom Dovlo, that is the name.
That's it.
And we should be able to go straight forward and baptize. But we force people to insert names.
Ooh.
And I must say, sometimes those people at the birth and deaths registry, and sometimes some teachers, a child comes to the school class 1, then they ask you, what is your name? I've even realized that sometimes the spelling of the name goes wrong.
So we'll continue from that. I have a classic example of the spelling of the name. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll be back, and we'll continue from where Osofu left off. Yes.
Of life, in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
You're welcome back again to Let's Talk About, a program put together by Trinity United Church Legon to discuss issues that bother all of us. Today we're talking about what is in a name. But we must sincerely apologize for a break in transmission, I think, regarding the sound. So also for you, I have to go back a little and sum up some of the things that we talked about, like the James being just one name of the Europeans, but we don't have it that way in Africa, yes.
So if you look at the Bible, in the Old Testament, they always have a name. Sometimes there might be one other name, but they are called by a particular name. So Abraham is called Abraham. Isaac is called Isaac. Isaac is not called Isaac Abraham. When you come into the New Testament, Timothy is called Timothy. James is called James. And those are their names. It's just one name, but it is a complete name. But because of the missionary exposure that they gave us, the impression is created that if you have been given a family name and you come to be baptized, you must have a Christian name. And the Christian is really in the context of a foreign name. That's why I said names like Rose, Vida, Victoria, Bacchus. These are not names found in the Bible.
Okay.
And yet people give those names to their children
so if
on the day they are being baptized.
Sorry for the interruption, but if anything at all, a Christian name should be a name that identifies you with Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Possibly.
Possibly.
Or brings memory. For example, if a child is called Jigboji, patience.
Okay.
There is a reason for which that name is being given to the child.
Okay.
Or peace. There's a reason. So the parents might have that historical background for which they are given that name. So these names are given for a reason. And when the baptism is done, One could give a name to serve as a reminder of an event.
Well, I'm not beginning to understand why present day Christian people, some of them, would like to go with names like we've already talked about, Inshira, Adom, and all that. Because for them, I believe the understanding of the name is much more critical. Yes. And not just bearing a name that you refer to as Christian, which is a foreign name, which could be a European name. Oh, okay.
And I mentioned also that sometimes there are errors that come along the line, even in the spelling of the name.
Oh, yes.
So you find a child is called Michael, and it's spelled as Micheal. But if you go into the Bible, it is Michael. Michael.
With the N as E-L.
Yes, Michael. Michael, and not Michael. But it is spelled that way from class 1, and the child keeps going and going and going with it. Sometimes even names like Andrew and Andrews. Just the S makes a difference.
So, Michael, Emmanuel, what's the significance of the L at the end there?
Normally, the L in most Hebrew names has a relationship to God.
Okay.
So, Emmanuel, God is with us. Shemuel means God hears.
Oh, okay.
So most of the L's have that, or the Yah. If you hear the Yah, they have relationship to Yahweh. So those are names. Just as we also will give Nyameche,
Okay.
we'll give a name that has some Unyame in it.
So, Nyamiche might be
A gift of God that was given. And so anytime, possibly the mother was not having a child and had a delayed birth, and then the Lord gives her a child. So it says this child is called Nyameche.
I find in Ghana the other names to have great meanings. Almost every other name has a meaning.
Yes.
And that to me is quite good.
I hope that next week we are able to bring together some Gans and Avis, because they have a lot of rich heritage in their names. A Gan can mention the name. We normally call them all Gans, but to the typical Gans, somebody from Osu is a Gan, but comes from Osu Alata. Somebody from Tishi is from Tishi, and even within Tishi, there might be some clans. And the person's name, even though he comes from Tishi, would take you to a particular family, because that is the name that family gives to their people. So each of these clans within Accra have a distinct name. You find that some of them even have names that sound Akan.
Okay.
Otu.
Which the lattice
Yes.
would also,
Otu.
name children.
So
after.
you hear Otu, you hear Ofuri, and these are names, if you trace their roots, you might find that they are coming possibly from Otubluhum, or places where they have links with some tribes outside of Accra.
Because sometimes I hear names, Ghana names like Yabua,
Yes.
which means they might have some relationship with some Akan, something. We should trace the history.
Yes.
Oh, so for this, I think about Christian name and foreign names, the distinction has been made very clear today. And I thank you so much. The distinction is very clear. Now, we have a number of messages from viewers, listeners, acknowledging how insightful the program is. So can we have a few of them, if it's possible? People are beginning to understand clearly, also with the explanations that you have given us, especially, I believe, with the Christian names and foreign names. So Christian names are not necessarily Christian.
No.
Some names, but there are foreign names that the missionaries believe we should attach it to our names.
And some parents also give those because they might have somebody might have read a book written by Charles, and so want to name the child after Charles. Well, But it doesn't make it Christian
Okay.
in the true sense.
And Christian in this sense is names that identify us with Jesus Christ, not necessarily so.
Or with the body of Christ.
Okay. Okay. That is very clear. That is very, 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 very clear. Okay. Now, also, I want us to delve a little bit into add some other names. We've been talking about Ghana names, Akan names, Ever names. One of the Ever names that I came across was Bomita or whatever. And literally, I was told that it means that a goat has swallowed saliva. Yes. But I delved deeper and realized that it's not just because a goat has swallowed saliva that's the essence of the name, but there's circumstances surrounding that. Something that is not usually the case has happened. Some phenomenal situation has happened. Something that could not be observed. You cannot observe easily a goat swallowing saliva. So it helped me to understand a little bit. I was also told that a name as Adupo means a rubbish dump.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean a person is rubbish.
No.
And so these insightful explanations are very much welcome.
And they are very important to the family from which the child has come.
Okay.
For the outside world, we might take it literal.
Okay.
But for them, an event took place which they do not want to forget.
But one thing that beats my imagination is I've never come across an European bearing an African indigenous name. We always are taking their names.
Yeah, well, because the belief is that we are colonized.
Oh, okay. Now, Osofo, I want us also to look at some of the misconceptions. We've talked about a few, but are there other areas that you see some misconceptions about naming?
Yes. There are some particular order in some families. Some families will name the first one.
Sorry for the interruption, Osofo. Comment by the Akwapon Ekufu. She says, interesting discussion. I'm learning a lot this evening. So we can continue.
Right. So in some homes, the firstborn is named after the father, the secondborn after the mother, maybe the 10th after the uncle or auntie, depending on the sex.
Okay.
In some cultures, you have to name your firstborn after your auntie, who led the delegation to contract the marriage. As a way of appreciation. In some cultures, none of these are done, but they are following a certain order. Let me give an example. If, say, there's a Krobo, and in the line in which he comes, he's supposed to be called, let's say, I'm using a name just like that. He's supposed to be called, let's say, Adamte, the Dangwis, Adamte. And the father doesn't know and gives him maybe another name, Adamki, or something else. The family can go back to the family house and reverse the name.
Oh, okay. Because it doesn't conform with the other.
Exactly. And sometimes even the ritual and the way it was performed. Because, you see, the Krobos will normally, in the naming ceremony, tie a strand with beads on it on the child's wrists. And there is a reason for doing that. So if that is not done, sometimes in a church setting, they might go home and perform the ritual all over.
So why do you think an African Christian would not want to take a family name? Because, well, I'm trying to understand answer my own question. Sometimes people believe that, as for the family traditional names, they are not good enough. They are, it's evil and all that.
It is our own. Sometimes that is the belief we have had. But why do you call your child White?
Okay.
Of Mr. Fox.
or Mr. Mason.
Or even Jacob. Jacob means cunning.
Okay.
So why would you want to give a child's name as Jacob when you know it means one who is cunning? Maybe because it is in the Bible. So there are some of our names that have, as we said, reasons for which they are given. Even if you see the name as bad, I believe that we have every right to pray over the name and set it apart. I always have this example. There used to be a former national chairman of the, I think the Christ Apostolic Church, or one of them. He was called Abebrese. You know, he rose through the ranks to become the national chairman of that big church. But if you listen to the name, it looks as if he's one who has to struggle through life.
Full of trouble.
Full of trouble. So sometimes the names might have been a historical event. And that does not necessarily mean that if somebody carries it, he's going to incur that same displeasure. Because when we are in Christ, we are a new creation.
That's right.
And it makes a difference, you know. And let me emphasize here that we are giving names to initiate us into a family, not into the church. We can never leave our families. We can never leave our families. Even if we decide to forsake the family, maybe a time will come, we'll look for the family. Our children are going to be married. We want to have an audience. We need a family around us. And so we need the family. Even sometimes death, as a pastor, I've realized somebody dies and the family has to be involved. Because there's nobody in Trinity United Church who dies and the church goes for the body from the morgue.
Okay.
It is the one who owns the body who goes for the body.
And that's the family.
That is the family. So we all are initiated into the family and we belong to the family. As for the church, you can leave the church, but you cannot leave your family. So that is why the naming ceremony is important in some cultures, because that is the way by which they welcome you officially into that home. And you keep your identity there. So you hear some people here say that this is where your naval cord is buried. So whatever happens, that is where you belong. You know, that is where you find your identity.
Also, why would the name of Paul be changed from Saul to Paul?
In fact, this thing was not a change. It was more of a language. Paul, who is also called Saul.
Oh.
So it is not really a change of name because of his conversion.
So of what origin is Paul?
Paul was a Jew.
Okay.
You know, but he worked among the Gentiles.
Well, originally he was Saul.
He was Saul, and that Saul is a Jew.
Okay.
As he worked among the Gentiles, he needed to have an identity. So that Saul also is seen as Paul.
Okay.
It's like Peter. You know, Peter, Cephas. They are all the same. So some of the names, just like we're talking about Patience and Jigboji. So in the English, it is Patience. In the Ewe, it is Jibodi. But they are all making reference to the same value or the same person.
So what would be the Jewish name for Jesus? Jesus is more Greek?
Jesus is Yeshua.
Yeshua.
Yes, Yeshua is actually the Hebrew for the name.
So the Jesus is what?
The Jesus, Jesus, is more of the Greek. Yeah, so it's come and gone through, like you see, Christos, Christ. The equivalent is Messiah, Messiah.
Messiah in what?
Messiah in the Hebrew.
In the Hebrew?
Yes, Messiah. Okay. So he's called Jesus the Messiah.
Okay.
So Paul normally would say Christ Jesus.
Jesus.
That is Messiah Jesus.
Ooh.
Yeah. So names really have what they do.
And then one thing that is of very much interest to me is this name Ayensu in Ghana. Has it got something to do with Yesu? Ayensu, Yesu?
Well, I haven't given thought to that. Yes, I haven't given thought to that. Obviously, it existed before the coming of Christianity.
Okay.
So it's possibly that is also another trend.
Okay.
You know, there are some names that are sometimes mentioned. There are some Ghana names that seem to rhyme like names in Nigeria.
Because of the connection between those who migrated over here. Also, what would you say about names that were given to people to supposedly prevent death from taking them? Example, Kofi Bola, as in garbage dump.
Yes.
Kwame Owompe, etc., etc.
It's just like Adupo.
Yes, rubbish dump.
Rubbish dump. But that name has been kept through. So it is not about that individual. Most times it is not about that individual. There are a few cases where when people keep dying, the children are given some marks and they call them donko. You know, they give a scary name. The idea is that they give you a scary name so that the devil, the evil spirits will not take the child away. So when they give a scary name, then the child will remain. But so those names stay. But sometimes you find that it is not about that particular person, but the person after whom he or she was named, who had that name Adukbu.
Okay. But is that true, that you are giving some kind of queer name?
Oh,
the spirits that will come hunting and killing the child will go?
For all these names that we have, you never know where they came from. You know, there are some names that are linked to rivers. You know, like you said, Ayensu. There's a river, Ayensu. Oti.
Okay.
You know, so there are rivers. When you really ask, you might come to a root and say that at a certain point, there were no boys in that family. So they went to consult the river god and got the name of the child from that river god.
Okay.
But it has traveled over several generations.
Yeah. There's a question by Daniel Kuchwati. Is there any significance to hyphenated names?
Well, people hyphenate because they sometimes are combining two.
Like my name, Kwapon Kufu, is hyphenated.
Yes. But I'm sure the Kwapon and the Kufu, they stand separately there.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have hyphenated it for a reason.
Yes, because my father told me that the Kwapon is my paternal grandmother's name.
Okay.
And Akufu is his father's name.
Right. So you see, there is a history. So you have not just hyphenated it, but it's bringing together two sides.
Okay.
You see, some ladies will get married and take their maiden names and their husband's name and compound it. So there are reasons why people do some of these.
So the establishment of the meanings would bring some clarity to us regarding the kind of names that we
because
have.
it's a documentation.
Yes.
So we don't just have to take names at the surface. We need to ask people, do you know the reason why? Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I once went on a mission with some students to Afram Plains, precisely Tiasi. And then I was the leader of the delegation. So we went to greet the chief. And then I told him, my name is Obeng. And the chief quickly rushed into the room and went and brought a bottle of schnapp.
Why?
Your guess is as good as mine. He said, his uncle, Obeng, the Kwawus also have Obeng. So he says Obeng is a stool name. And so if I've come from the eastern region, that part of eastern region, it means his grandfathers have visited him.
Wow.
So he has to pour libation.
Wow.
But that is the power of a name. It establishes a link. It establishes a link. So we should not just take names and say, oh, I've heard people say, oh, my father didn't take care of me, so I won't name my children after him. But I tell them that, look, a drop of sperm is expensive. So if our fathers donated, even if they did not take responsibility, they are responsible for the donation.
Also, last week you said something, and I remember it so well, that man is made of the material and the immaterial. So the immaterial, as we might call spirit, that we does not die and all that, or our DNA, is also there. So our names, are they on the immaterial? Are they on our spirits?
Well, names most times are basically to identify here as here.
Okay.
But as I said jokingly, the Bible says that whatever name Adam gave to the creature, that became its name.
Okay.
So ideally, if a father gives a name, or somebody is given a name, and that person is a Christian, that name is the name written in the book of life. So if the person changes his or her name, I don't know what name the person will call, but names leave a mark. They leave an identity, not necessarily on the immaterial. The immaterial, in a way, is identified because every person, as an individual, has a certain gene and a certain identity. You might have several Obengs. But what makes me Obeng will not be what makes you Obeng.
Obeng.
So we are two different people, but the same name. Yes.
It's very interesting. Sometimes people tend to tell themselves, well, I don't have a good name, so I'm going to change it. And they go and change.
Well,
is that okay?
The change, you see, you change, and what happens is that possibly your children will name you after the changed name. And gradually a time will come, you cannot find your identity in your family.
Okay.
So you are Kwapong Ekufufu. Then your children decide that we'll name our children Osei-Tutu.
Oh, it doesn't establish the
So when
family
they go
connection.
to your hometown, where is Osei-Tutu coming from? They can't find Osei-Tutu.
Oh, this is interesting. So the unnecessary fear that we harbor, that a certain name, gives us away to certain evil influences, that fear is unfounded.
Jacob. A number of people are called Jacob. Are they deceptive?
No.
They are not.
And then one other thing that also I want you to comment on is that God says he calls us, each and every one of us, by name. God knows us by our names.
Yes.
And I believe that if God knows us by our names, he does not bring us into any evil influences of a name.
Not necessarily. The example that quickly comes to my mind is when God called Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't call him by any other name but Samuel. Samuel didn't know God knew his name. That's why he was confused. Because he thought that voice was coming from somewhere. It was when he went to Eli that Eli said, when you hear it again, say, speak, for your servant is listening.
Yes.
So God knows us by name. And very often when we dream or we think God is speaking to us, he mentions a particular name. Maybe God will call you Ben, or will call you this. He has a name of identity.
Oh, my mind on certain issues about names is gradually changing. Because now, okay, question from Ken. When a person converts from Islam, being that the name the person has signifies a religion, isn't it reasonable in this case to have a Christian name?
Right. There are some Christians who convert, some Muslims who convert to Christianity, and they keep it. I know a man who is called Ahmed Ajay.
Okay.
He has kept the Ahmed for a purpose of identity. Because sometimes what we say are Muslim names are not really Muslim names, but they are cultural names. But because they were Muslims, we tend to think that they were given to them as Muslims. But it might not be.
The same thing with the Christian,
Yes.
so-called Christian and European names.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's Joyce Efia Ejipon, very educational program. God bless you. Oh, he calls you a jobbing. And then Joseph Jenfi, I really like Dr. Reverend Martin's African wear. Very nice and attractive. So what would you call this attire? Is there a name?
I never know its name.
Okay.
I'm only wearing it.
I wore something one time. Somebody met me and said, what you are wearing is Ifi Mosia. Comment by Michael Obeng Boafo. Papa, thank you for the spelling of Michael.
Yes, Michael.
Michael.
Yes.
Some say it's Micheal.
Yes.
But
the same applies to Rachel.
Okay.
The Hebrew is Rachel. Okay. Rachel. Just like we're saying, L endings, L. So it is not Rachel. No, it is Rachel.
Okay.
But sometimes maybe some class 1 teacher misspelled it.
All because they did not understand.
Well, and it's been carried over and over and over.
Over and over.
And
so understanding is key.
Yes.
If you understood what L means, yes, you wouldn't do it the other way around. Ooh. So next week you said we'll be looking
we'll do well. We want to look at the identities
Okay.
I'm trying to get some.
Oh, this is Ben Banfo. Sorry, Papa. Papa, please, why majority of the Akan names don't easily come with meanings as the always, who's related linguistically to their language?
Yeah, I really do not know the reason, even though there are some names among the Akans that have meanings. If you hear a name Anto or Antoba,
Okay.
the meaning is that that child did not come to meet the father.
Oh, Antobam.
Yes, he was conceived when his father died. In fact, that is the reason why sometimes when there are widowhood rights,
Yeah.
they allow the woman to stay for 9 months, just in case the man might have impregnated the woman before his death.
So it's because the accounts they don't know, but they always know.
Well, the Eves, I think the Eves also use circumstances
Okay.
to give the names. And not necessarily, so you don't find Jigbodi traveling through as a name, but just one person will be called Jigbodi.
Patience.
And then there will be some other name attached to it. So Jigbodi, Obeng, yes.
My father tells me that the Ekufu is Akufu, warriors, fighters. And it settles down with me well. I tend to. Well, are there any more questions? We will try and see if there are more questions. But it's from the clock, it looks to me our time is almost up. So also, if we can just round up on what we have discussed so far today on why a name.
Right, thank you.
Oh, Ellen Soa. I know families that give the name of the man who steps up to take care of the child, especially if the father did not take responsibility for the child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we are all trying to sort out in our minds that names are important. They give an identity. They are a source of documentation for a family, for a clan. And therefore, as we give names, we should be mindful of this. And not just think that, well, let me give any name. You might give a name and your child will not be able to trace its roots. If you recall, when we were having a study on Nehemiah, there was a group of people who belonged to the priestly family. But because they could not really justify their genealogy, they were deprived of the priestly benefits because they could not find their identity.
So names are very important.
Very, very important.
They establish a connection.
Yes.
They establish your identity with the family and all that. Somebody has told me that anybody who is called Boafo essentially is a helper. And the person also told me, he said, Boateng must be a very tall person in stature who essentially is also a helper. Well, I tend to, it tends to strike a chord with me. That it
The Akans have a lot of links for...
So, sorry again for the interruption. Question from George. From the Christian perspective, what's the meaning or significance of our name?
Of our name.
Yes.
The mandate was given to Adam to give a name. So if we talk about Christian perspective, then I'll link it to a biblical perspective. So we are given a basis to give a name. That's why a father gives a name to a child, and it holds.
Okay.
Yes. So we have that. But as I said, bringing other names because the person is being baptized or want the child to have a Christian name, normally we misfire.
So identity, then you also talked about documentation.
Yes.
Okay. And another point is that we must know what a name entails,
Yes.
which is also very critical, very, very important. Or else you just be giving any name and you don't establish the connection.
But when I grew up, I asked my father, why did he call me Martin? And he said he read about Martin Luther.
Oh, okay.
And he was so thrilled by the reforms that he undertook that he decided to call his son Martin.
Martin.
So there's a reason for which he called it.
So we must have a reason.
We must.
We must have the understanding.
So you don't go and say, Mambakwe, Mambie. You don't, names, we don't beg
Also for
names.
George again, he says a name like Kofi Babone.
No, Kofi Baboni is more of this thing given to the Friday born boys, you know. But
Okay, so it's the appellation.
But it was given. You know, it just, you know, they have ya prekon, you know, kweku deku, you know, yeah, kwabana dapa.
There's another one, something kweku bonsam.
Well,
But these are appellations.
yes.
And we must understand
they
them.
Yes.
So we don't think that they have any such bad
They
influences.
don't. Just like I've talked about Jacob.
Okay.
We name our children Jacob, and it doesn't really have much influence on them. Somebody is called Abebrese. You know, in fact, recently I met one person. He is called Jinenchi.
Jinenchi.
Jinenchi. And according to him, it is a royal name.
Oh, really?
It is only a few people who are given that name. You
Also, for Penny says, what's your take on people naming their children God or Jesus?
Wow.
Of course, they never named their children as Jesus Christ.
No.
But
Well,
they say Jesus.
But if you name your child Joshua, Joshua is in the same line as Yeshua.
So there's nothing wrong.
So, well, yes, if you want to name your child Jesus, you know, we had Bar Jesus
Okay.
in the Bible. So Jesus was a name that was very common.
Okay.
Yes. So if somebody wants to name the son Jesus, well, I think it's okay. But most times,
Okay.
there is a limit to which we go
All right.
in some of these things. We want to give an identity to the person rather than move into that realm of the deity.
All right. Okay. I think we'll bring it to a close, otherwise we'll be getting the names and trying to establish their significances and relationships and all that. But next week, as you have said, we'll continue from this point. We thank you so much for participating by way of questions and comments, and also for thanks you very much. It's been so insightful and very enlightening. Next week, God willing, 7 o'clock, we'll be here, Wednesday, and we'll continue from where we've left off. Do have a great and a lovely night. Bye.
Life in light of both global and domestic developments, the within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.